The story of Square Enix is one of ups and downs, and many times the decisions they can make can be rather frustrating. However, I do think today's story is going to be one of ups, and hopefully is a prelude of great things to come. Yosuke Saito is back in control of Dragon Quest, but I think today's story will possibly have ramifications far outside of just Dragon Quest. Hello everybody. It's your boy Jmulls. Today, we have a lot to talk about. So what's going on? Well, the Japanese website Famitsu put out a new article. Now, granted, I have to use Google Translate to find out what the heck's being talked about here, but the Google Translate says the title is called 171 Game Creators Share Their Aspirations for 2026, from sincere goals to comments suggesting new work. The future of the gaming industry lies here, New Year's special feature. And it's a bunch of very short blurbs from a bunch of different people, like Yoshinori Kitase from Square Enix, Yosuke Saito, that'll be the big one we talk about in a bit, Masahashi Takahashi, etc, 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 etc. Hi, Yoshi P. But the spark for today's story largely lies on this one, this blurb for Yosuke Saito. For those who may not know who he is heavily involved with both Dragon Quest and Nier. Nier Automata being one of my favorite games. In fact, it is my favorite game of all time. But let's read what he has to say under aspirations. The 40th anniversary of Dragon Quest is finally upon us. It's amazing. 40 years, dang. Personally, after finishing my role as producer of something, I guess, and leaving the Dragon Quest field due to organizational restructuring and so on, I will once again be involved in the Dragon Quest titles as the person in charge in April 2024. Google Translate, don't expect this to be like word for word accurate as to what he said. And don't expect grammatical perfection or anything. And as I am currently in the middle of developing various projects, I think I'll have a lot more to talk about. It's an amazing feeling. I'll do my best. Please support me. After finishing my role as producer of Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age. Now, while I think we got the broad brushstrokes of what he was talking about there is another translation provided from Stealth40k on Twitter. The 40th anniversary of Dragon Quest is finally upon us. 40 years is amazing. Personally, after finishing my role as producer of Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age, I left the Dragon Quest scene. And due to organizational restructuring, I've been involved in the Dragon Quest titles since April 2024 as the person in charge. This makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? I'm currently in the middle of developing various projects, so I think I'll have a lot more to talk about. It's an amazing feeling. I'll do my best. Please support me. And this is the reason I'm making today's video, because this, to me, despite all the bad PR that Square Enix can get, for instance, this report that Square Enix sets out to use generative AI to automate about 70% of repetitive Q&A and debugging tasks by the end of 2027. My take on that one quickly before we get into the Dragon Quest side of things. If games come out and they're not that buggy or they're not broken at all, people aren't going to care. But oh my god, the Twitter scene is going to be hilarious if these games start coming out broken and buggy and just a whole cornucopia of various issues. That will be funny, but time will tell for that one. But again, despite all the bad PR and some of the really bad decisions that I think Square Enix have made in recent-ish years, this to me is a sign of optimism and something that I like to see personally, even as someone who isn't the biggest Dragon Quest fan of all time. Now, why is this? Because I think Dragon Quest, and particularly Dragon Quest XII, might be a microcosm of what's going on with Square Enix right now. So I've had a long-running theory at this point that is not based on any inside sources. I don't have any. It's just my gut instinct. But I think they went back to the drawing board for Dragon Quest XII. Now, why do I think that? Well, when we first had the teaser trailer for Dragon Quest XII all those years ago at this point, the tone of the trailer was darker than what I have personally experienced with Dragon Quest, which, albeit, is limited, but still, you can just feel from the use of color, the tone of this overall trailer, while it is short, definitely feels darker. And if I recall correctly, there were claims that the direction of Dragon Quest XII was to take the series in a darker, more mature direction, while also possibly shaking up the gameplay loop. It's been years since I've heard that, so I don't remember how verifiable that was, but it lines up with the overall feel of this admittedly short little teaser. But it's been so long, And it's not like we've been absent of Dragon Quest news. They've been pumping out remakes and remasters all the dang time. Heck, the next one is Dragon Quest VII. But what I think happened was that this teaser came out in the height of Square Enix's push to transform Final Fantasy into a darker, more mature series. I think they were trying to do the exact same thing to Dragon Quest, but for whatever reason, whether that be reaction to Final Fantasy's modern direction, whether that be discussion surrounding Dragon Quest XII itself, there has seemingly been a massive shift in the direction of Square Enix in the last couple of years. And they keep talking about this big restructuring of Square Enix that they're trying to undergo. That's going to take a little bit of time, a couple of years, but I think Dragon Quest XII is a good little microcosm of what's going on with Square Enix. Because I think they went back to the drawing board and are probably going to have Dragon Quest XII end up being far more traditional Dragon Quest than what people imagine Dragon Quest should be than what Dragon Quest XII was almost certainly going to be. Heck, even if you go back to look at the opening movie for Dragon Quest XI, even this scene is rather dark because the story of Dragon Quest can get rather emotional and dark. If you've played Dragon Quest XI, you will know this. But immediately, the tone is fundamentally different to what is presented in Dragon Quest XII's little snippet here. And this lines up with, like, the tonal direction shift Final Fantasy has undergone, I would say over the last couple of years, but it's been longer than that. But, like, compared to Dragon Quest XI, which a lot of people absolutely love and cherish, rightfully so, because this game is absolutely phenomenal, it feels so fundamentally different. And you could argue maybe this is misrepresentative of the overall experience for what Dragon Quest XII was going to be. However, the whole idea of a teaser trailer is to give people a taste of the overall experience. I am also a firm believer that a lot of the time, a very brief taste of something can give you the idea of the overall experience. It might not give you the full picture, but you'll have an understanding of something going on just beneath the surface. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if over the last couple of years, the reason we have not seen anything from Dragon Quest XII is because they just went back to the drawing board and said, this tonal direction shift maybe isn't working for Final Fantasy. Let's not mess about other big, long-running, beloved RPG series like Dragon Quest. Let's not do that there either. Let's go back to the drawing board, go back to the fundamentals. We'll have a bunch of smaller projects for the IEP to come out as we're working on Dragon Quest XII, but let's focus down and do this. That's what I think happened with Dragon Quest. I'm not against this, by the way. In fact, this to me gives me more hope and optimism for the future of Square Enix than anything else. Because it also lines up with what we talked about in the last section, with bringing back Yosuke Saito to be in charge of Dragon Quest, which happened back in April 2024, which is after they announced this game by a few years, by the way. So who knows? Maybe they went back to the drawing board relatively recently with Dragon Quest XII, The Flames of Fate. I actually kind of like that title. But still, that's what I think happened with Dragon Quest. Now, why do I think that's a good thing? And why do I think that's important? And why do I think that's an overall little microcosm example of what's going on with Square Enix? Well, let's get into that. Now, while some people like to doom and gloom about Square Enix as if everything they do is just categorically bad, I am not of that opinion. I still largely enjoy pretty much every game that Square Enix puts out nowadays. And while I may have my issues with some of their AAA games, their smaller games I think is where they really start to shine here. Enter Team Asano. Now, they absolutely pump games out. I mean, look at this. Team Asano producer Masashi Takahashi teases Creative Studio 5 has unannounced games in development. Have you played Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster, Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and Octopath Traveler 0? In 2026, Creative Studio 5 has announced Dragon Quest 7 Reimagined, The Adventures of Elliot, The Millennium Tales, as well as some unannounced titles, so there's plenty to look forward to. And while Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster was just a remaster of a 3DS game, Bravely Default's still one of my favorite games the last few years. It's an absolutely phenomenal game overall that I would put toe-to-toe with the best of Final Fantasy. Genuinely, if you can play it, go play Bravely Default. If you are at all a fan of turn-based JRPGs, It is that phenomenal. I understand that the art style may be a little off-putting to some people, but like genuinely, that game is brilliant. And while I've only really started to dip my toe into Octopath, I've been really enjoying Octopath. And I can only imagine I'm going to continue to enjoy Dragon Quest if I can just get around to playing more of them. The smaller games, the remasters, the HD 2D. Some of Square Enix's best work of recent years, in my opinion, comes from these guys. And if Square Enix is putting them in charge of even more stuff, I view that as a good sign of things to come. Because it's the works that come out of these guys that feel more reminiscent to the Square Enix of old than a lot of the other more higher budget AAA games Square Enix puts out. I've played the demo for The Adventures of Elliot the Millennium Tales. It feels like a Square Enix take on a 2D Zelda in like all the best ways. I am genuinely looking forward to this game so much. If it's at all to the same quality of the Switch 2 demo that I played before, I could easily see that game being my game of the year for 2026. It is that good. So when you look at what Team Asano has been doing and you look at it side by side with them bringing back Yosuke Saito for Dragon Quest, even if I don't have all that much experience with Dragon Quest, I can put two and two together. This feels like Square Enix moving away from this more modern direction that they've been going in over the last decade or so and trying to revert to something that people love and appreciate. And I'll be very interested to see what Dragon Quest XII actually ends up becoming. And if it's something akin to what we saw all these years ago with this teaser for Dragon Quest XII, or if it's far more in the style or vein of Dragon Quest XI, or maybe somewhere in the middle. And it also gets me thinking, what is Final Fantasy XVII going to look like? Genuinely, I've been saying for a while that I don't think Final Fantasy's biggest issue nowadays is whether or not it's turn-based or real-time combat. It's how inconsistent the releases can be for mainline entries, but also how Final Fantasy doesn't have a gameplay identity anymore. I'd be really interested to see what they're doing for FF17. And like, this would be an absolute leap in logic, don't get me wrong here. I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if they try to go back to a turn-based game, especially after the success of something like Expedition 33. I don't think FF17 is going to look like Expedition 33 one for one or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if the success of Expedition 33 alleviated some of their concerns about doing that style of game for a mainline Final Fantasy game as to whether or not it could actually succeed, because that game did succeed. Or even if they choose to continue doing some kind of real-time combat system. Time will tell. I think overall, I am rather optimistic for the future of Square Enix, even if right now, and maybe for a little bit, their big AAA releases might be a bit light on news. These guys, however, have been doing phenomenal work, even despite the fact quite a few of these titles are remasters or remakes, or in the case of Octopath Traveler 0, taking a mobile game and retooling the story and reconfiguring the gameplay to work as a traditional RPG. By the way, do that for Nier Reincarnation, please, I beg. Also, for the love of all that is holy, allow one of these unannounced titles to be Xenogears. I am not asking for much. This game has already become one of my favorite games of all time, and I'm not even out of disc 1. We need more. What if they did something like Octopath Traveler 0, but they did it for Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis? You know, you take that mobile gacha game and you make it a traditional RPG. Maybe to make it sound cool, you just drop the title Ever Crisis and you just call it Final Fantasy VII. And you make the extra stories like First Soldier, extra stories that you can experience over the course of Final Fantasy VII. Just saying, that'd be a really cool idea, wouldn't it? Square Enix overall, though, are responsible for some of my favorite games of all time, and still some of my favorite games of the modern day. But it's clear they need a direction shift. I think they understand that. I think a lot of us understand that. And I'll be very interested to see what their internal restructuring leads to in the coming years. Hopefully it's for the best. I am cautiously optimistic though. But here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with what you would love to see out of Square Enix in the coming years. What old title would you love for them to revisit, and why is it Xenogears? Or what do you think the future of Final Fantasy should look like? Or Dragon Quest? Or Kingdom Hearts? I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. But Square Enix recently hasn't been all sunshine and lollipops. to no one's surprise. And in the realm of the MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, they've been suffering from numerous DDoS attacks. DDoS. And it's become an entire situation. So we need to talk about it. Want to find out more? Check out this video right here for more. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again. I just bit my tongue.